Represent Root Alley.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Grosso with the Indie Spiritualist podcast on the Be Here Now network, and I am thoroughly excited today to have a very special guest, Sage Francis, joining me. Sage, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your platform.
Yes, sir. It's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while. So before we jump into the conversation, I want to read your bio for any listeners that aren't familiar with you and your breadth of work, which is just amazing. Sage Francis is CEO of Strange Famous Records and half of the Epic Beardmen, and is widely considered one of our generation's greatest lyricists. His gifted wordplay creates vivid narratives to instigate as well as inspire, but it often derives from an accumulation of public disdain and personal turmoil. Dubbed the forefather of indie hop, a subgenre which gained great traction in the late 90s, Francis originally earned worldwide acclaim in the early 2000s by winning the most highly coveted titles of the MC battle circuit. This was coupled with the waves he was causing in the newly burgeoning spoken word scene. Despite having no official distribution or label support, Francis's unique brand of music spread like wildfire via the advent of file-sharing networks which caught the attention of labels worldwide. With his first studio album, Personal Journals, Francis daringly set aside the more boastful side of rap by catering to his poetic leanings and scathing socio-political commentary. By 2005, Sage Francis was the first hip-hop artist signed to Epitaph Records and soon became one of the highest-selling artists of his genre. Rather than abandon his day-to-day grind at the helm of SFR, he channeled all of his newfound resources into it, allowing the label to expand in staff as well as roster. Several studio albums and numerous sick of mixtapes later, Uncle Sage has settled into his old man shaking his fist at a SoundCloud status while continuing to push buttons from his New England home. New solo projects and a podcast are in the works. A new life is in progress. Don't poke the beard. And you can find out more about Sage at strangefamousrecords.com. I'll have that linked on my website, or if you're checking this out on the Be Here Now network, just scroll down and the links will be there. Also to a bunch of his music and all sorts of stuff. How painful was that for you to sit through, Sage?
It was more painful to write. I didn't really write. I wrote some of it, but the new bio is a composite of all bios that have been written about me over the years, and I just took the parts that I like the best and put it into a compact short bio.
Nice. We got a bio mashup happening here. Yeah, like when people read my bios, I always ask them to do shorter ones because it's very awkward just sitting there listening to shit being talked about yourself, and I don't know, man. But I gotta say, I love the old man shaking his fist at a SoundCloud. That makes me think of Abe from The Simpsons. I don't know if you're a fan.
Totally. Yeah,
that's great. So let's start out with, for you, what's probably going to be a little boring stuff. But, you know, a lot of my listeners, we definitely have hip-hop heads here, but we also have people that are into spirituality and just well-being and horror, all kinds of different listeners. So for those that don't know about your work, if you don't mind taking us back a little bit, to your origins of, like, being a child. I know you're around 8, if I remember correctly, when you kind of first started, rhyming. And if you want to talk about really whatever you feel compelled to talk about, what drew you to hip hop, anything that stands out in your childhood, wherever you want to go with that.
Okay. I was 8 years old, around 8 years old. I just remember there was hip hop was kind of floating around pop culture, but it was considered a fad at the time.
Sure.
There was the break-in phase, and the fad, that was a fad. There was like, not that b-boying's a fad, but there was like every kid in suburban America was taking breakdancing lessons at the Y, Yeah. And so this sort of was around that era, and it just grabbed me. The rap is what grabbed me the most. It was the use of rhymes. It was people talking tough. It was the bragging part of it. It was something childish about it, but also I saw the serious aspects of it as well once I delved deeper and I could find more, which was difficult.
Sure.
There wasn't hip hop sections at record stores, and my family had no idea what hip hop was, what rappers were. So I kind of did my best to make sense of it every time I would come across something that resembled what I knew to be hip hop. So I would collect those things and I would compile these things, and then I was able to point it out to other people, say, hey, where can I get more of this kind of stuff? And then people would point me some. I can remember I was at day camp and a kid was like, hey, did you know that on Saturday nights they play 1 hour of hip hop on 88.9?
College stations, yeah.
Yeah. So at one, and I was like, what? Like stuff like that was just you, because I saved maybe $10 a week in allowance money, and I'd get to go to the tape store and flip through tapes and find something that looked like hip hop, but I was never I didn't know who they were. I just had to guess based on the cover. But this radio station, WERS in Boston, was just laying down the best hip hop and of the time. It was just gritty stuff, right? And I would tape that and I would listen to it compulsively, and they played instrumental sections sometimes, so I would make little instrumentals out of that by doing pause tape mixes where I had a dual cassette player on my boombox. Eventually I got a boombox because the essential hip hop gear.
Definitely.
Yeah, so since I couldn't really get a lot of hip hop, I wanted to make hip hop and emulate my favorite rappers. So I would, write a lot of songs that some sounded like Run DMC, some eventually, work my way toward Too Short, and because amazingly his tape was available in a Rhode Island mall. It's bizarre the stuff you could find, and Slick Rick, you had Slick Rick songs, just having fun, just trying to learn, get my chops, trying to learn how to rap and doing it by myself. I guess some other background info is important. I was raised an only child. Yeah. So I wasn't really in a neighborhood. I lived in more of a wooded area of northern Rhode Island. And I was left to my own devices for the most part. And I was able to explore my creative side without a big brother or a big sister heckling me and making me feel shitty. Like I could keep it my secret. Right. And I think that was really important for developing myself as an artist, where it was just me I had to impress. It was, I didn't have to worry about people making fun of me unless I decided to show it to them. And I knew I wasn't going to show it to anybody until I was sure that I was onto something. I didn't want it to come across as some, I don't know, some gimmick or, this was me. To me, it was like, that's when you're a kid, music just becomes all of you.
Oh, yeah.
It's your identity. It was my identity. And it wasn't the kind of identity people in my town cared about. They didn't care about rap. They thought I was a weirdo for sure. And I was, speaking on pro-black matters. And, I've become very familiar with the works of Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey. And so when your heavy metal rock and roll town has this kid that's trying to press his rap stuff on you, luckily I knew how to fight.
Yeah. I understand. So, I don't want to cut you off if you have more to say, but I got to say, man, two peas in a pod. We're similar in age. I grew up the state next to you in Connecticut. I grew up in a town called East Haddam, which is just like you, very wooded. I was also, I was a skateboarder. I was into punk and hardcore and alternative, but I also loved hip hop. I mean, it started, I like how you said the juvenile aspect, because when I was early, it was like NWA and, there's something wrong about that. But over time, and this is still in the early to mid 90s, I got introduced to Gangstar and J-Roo and KRS and, these, and then Cannibal Ox, and just the whole kept going deeper and deeper. And it was like, wow. So I'm in high school, loving hip hop and heavy metal, rocking Eldridge Cleaver books and Huey Newton shit, and same thing. It's they were not a fan of that at all. I actually went back and did a whole high school address a couple of years ago, and the administrator in the front office, the same woman was there, pulled me aside and apologized. That was really healing for me. She's like, we didn't know how to handle you, and my 5 friends, we were total black sheeps, and she's like, we're sorry, or I'm sorry at least, and that meant a lot, man. So
that's wonderful. That's good. I'd like to have that experience too.
Didn't expect it, but yeah, it meant a lot.
I suppose you just kind of reminded me. I suppose another part of hip hop that drew me in was that it was so different from my normal life. It was
Right.
an escape. So the things they were talking about and how they were talking about it and the sound of the music,
Yeah.
I just didn't like my surroundings where I lived. So that was me being able to just jump into a whole other realm.
Sure.
And it was my comic books, you know, hip hop was not just the teacher, but it was it was my comic books, it was my adventure stories, it was everything. So
Yeah.
it was, and it was brand new, you know, so it was almost like it wasn't something that was totally figured out yet. So it's not like it had become academic where adults could come into my room and point a finger like, no, that's not an element. Don't
Right.
do that. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
there was a freshness to it that appealed to youth. And I think back then it was very youth. They still say hip hop is youth generated, but it's over 40 years old. It's like at some point you have to say, well, is it even hip hop anymore if it's not this or that? I don't know how to subcategorize hip hop because what's very popular these days isn't the type of hip hop I care about. It's not why I got into hip hop. So, and I don't want to split hairs there and like people would be like, oh, you're just old. And that's how all old people talk about new music, but it's not the same genre. We call it hip hop, but that is not the same genre. We let rock and roll splinter off into a million fucking subgenres.
Yeah.
But rap, I mean, and you say mumble rap, they think it's a derogatory term, but I mean, at some point, you have to give it different name.
Yeah. I teach weekly workshops with teenagers in a residential, and they're great kids. Like, you know, they're there for mental health issues. But sometimes I'll ask, you know, icebreaker questions or music will come up because it's a great way to get them engaged. And then whenever hip hop or rap comes up, it's just like you said, like Little Uzi, or I couldn't name you a Little Uzi song. I only know that name because of them, and I feel crotchety. I'm like, you know, I'm thinking of like Q-Tip's lyrics, and again KRS, Chuck D, and stuff that meant something, and real beats and like heart and passion, and but yeah, I mean, who am I to judge other stuff? But I agree, like that to me, that's not, you know, the heart of hip hop. But what are you gonna do?
I also feel it's in the words, it's in the messages, and that is invigorating to any age group. Even even when I was too young to truly understand what Chuck D was talking about. Yeah, I could tell there was something. It was multi-layered. It wasn't just him. Like he said, he doesn't rap for the sake of riddling. There's something else that is driving this music, and that I feel is missing in a lot of modern music, and I don't think it needs to, because I think people with that kind of drive can galvanize the youth and get them excited about these things.
Yeah.
And maybe they are. I asked about it sincerely recently as a tweet. I was like, hey, you know, out of the like what people consider mumble rap, who's really saying something these days, considering all the marches and protests and so I understand. I'm out of the loop. I want to learn more about it too. But I can say without a doubt, I don't like the sound of the music. It's not the kind of rap I like. And that's my fucking truth. So fuck off.
I know, and I agree, and that's where it's like I give it an honest chance, like because I want to like bond over some of the with the kids, but luckily like I'm open about it. I don't shit talk it to them, and you know, whatever. Like I've got tattoos, so they're cool with me. Like that's what matters to them. So I've got my in. But I also, you're saying like the old man thing. I gotta say, like I do appreciate how Atmosphere or Slug, you know, is embraced the dad rap thing. You know, like I chuckle about that because you know we're in our 40s. I don't know if he's 50 now or whatever, but like he's still killing it, I think, and I appreciate like just, yeah, man, I'm old. And even on the new RA record, he's talking about how he's the old man in the club with a headache and wants to go home and just calling himself out on it. You know, like.
Well, yeah, his whole. I mean, we have similar wells that we dip from when we write our music. Like it has to be life. It has to be based in what you experience in life.
Yeah.
So he can't be a 40. I think he's like 48. He can't be a 48-year-old writing the stuff he did when he was 27.
Right.
You can't, because you already said it when you were 27. Now what? Now what? So maybe he's not talking. Maybe he's not specifically targeting the younger demographic, but I think if a younger demographic cares about art and they hear someone speaking a truth, their truth it resonates.
Right.
It happens in every craft. It's what doesn't resonate is when someone is blowing something out of their horn that they haven't experienced.
Right.
You know.
So I couldn't agree more. And I don't want to get off the topic of you though, because I what I want to ask is going back. You're 8 and we got past that, but when you started doing like the rap battles, I mean, it's incredible. You beat who was I know Blueprint and but who'd you beat before Blueprint? Wasn't Esoteric?
That was another battle. Esoteric
Okay.
he was in the Super Bowl battle in Boston, so that was in '99. But to work my way up toward that, because I still kind of kept it hidden, and it wasn't something people celebrated in my general community. So I just kept it to myself. And my mom was supportive early on. She was supportive and like, oh, he's really into something. Let me help. I don't know, help him explore this. And she took me to the Run DMC concert with Public Enemy and
Cool.
EPMD, DJ Jazzy Jeff, and the Fresh Prince.
Yeah.
I tell that story all the time because it's just so amazing that all those artists were on the same bill, and I was 12 years old experiencing this. But then, as parents will look at stuff that their children like and then blame that for any ill behavior. And try to take it away as a punishment. And in my head, I had two things to myself. It was hip hop and karate. My love for ninjas and my love for hip hop. Yeah. They liked the karate stuff. I was very involved with martial arts. They liked how it, I think, centered me and gave me direction and discipline. But hip hop did the same thing.
Of course.
In different ways.
Right.
So I decided to just hide as much of it as I could and not let them use it as an excuse why I was failing math class. And it's crazy how long I kept it under wraps. And then the only way, there wasn't really rap shows that I could do, but there was contests, there was open mics, and the radio station would advertise a certain block party talent show type thing, and then my friend would drive me to it. And at first I was 12 when there was like youth clubs that I was 12, 13, and then 14 I was already starting a battle, but it wasn't freestyle battles. It was like I'd get up there and say my most vicious verse, and then someone would say their most vicious verse. That's kind of how back then, at least in our area. But that got me the confidence to be on stage in front of a crowd that liked hip hop, and I needed to prove myself because Vanilla Ice was the big joke of America, of the world at the time. So if you're a white guy trying to rap, you're automatically Vanilla Ice. So I had to get over that hump and be like, how do I prove I'm worthy of your attention? So I was doing fast rap, and I was doing tongue twister style deliveries, just the stuff that is parlor trickery as far as I'm concerned. But for a 14-year-old white kid to get up in, Southside Providence in front of a totally black crowd, and they have no idea who I am, I needed that. I needed something to show, oh, he's been working on this. This is not something we've ever heard before, not around here. So, shout out to Tongue Twister as well as Chip Fu from the Fushnikins. They're the ones that really got me excited about fast rap, and but that runs its course after a while. That gets tiring. It's like someone playing a guitar solo that never ends. Yeah. And you never get into the groove.
I love Daz effects, but I can only take them in pieces. They're fantastic, but I mean,
their first couple albums were mind blowing.
Yes,
the beat and everything. But yeah, that was definitely, that was the era. I remember that's right when that came out. That's right when Crisscross Jump came out. Yes. And being a 13 or 14-year-old kid and seeing that group get so huge, and I thought to myself, I have a very limited window of time where I can get noticed, so a record label can pick me up and see the value in a white kid who's talented and willing to put himself out there. And that obviously never happened, especially not, no one's there's no scouts in Rhode Island looking for the next big thing.
Right.
So after a while, I gave up on the whole idea. It's like I graduated high school. Um, I went to college. I still was battling whenever I could and building my chops in battles. But when I was in college, I discovered spoken word. And it was also around the time where my writing was getting more introspective. It wasn't the type of stuff that I was hearing from Run DMC or even Public Enemy or EPMD. It was I was writing more what people would say is like um, confessional,
Hmm.
where I'm speaking on emo matters. I don't
Yes.
like, but it was emotional stuff. I'm like trying to
For
work
sure.
out issues in my music, and that's not the stuff you get up in front of a crowd and be like, "Hey, listen to this, guys. I don't know where my dad is," and blah 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 blah. So I fell a little bit more into myself and started just writing deeper and deeper material, deeper as in not surface level, but there was a lot more metaphor usage, and I was kind of getting obsessed with rhyme sequences and interesting rhyme patterns that were not typical AABB patterns.
Right.
And then, so this was stuff I wasn't really rocking in like to crowds or trying to win battles with, but when I discovered spoken word because it was open mics at my college, and that's the only time I could get in front of a crowd. So I would get up there and do a cappella verses, and I wasn't gonna do my like I'm watching all these people do like real heartfelt poetry, which I didn't give a fuck about. Still, I didn't care. Like I
Yeah.
want rhymes. I want like I still was obsessed with rhymes, but I did want to perform my material. So I get up there, I started doing the more introspective material, and people were very supportive of it, which was opened me up. It made me feel more confident about exploring that side of writing in a hip hop context. But so a couple of years of that and me developing that and then getting involved with the spoken word slam scene, which
Yeah.
was competitive based. I was already a competitive artist thanks to this battles, and I did well with that. And it was like I was able to easily transfer everything I had learned from the battle side of hip hop and incorporate it into the poetry world. That is maybe a good thing, it may be a bad thing. For me at the time, it happened at the right time because it helped me meet a lot of influential people. I was all of a sudden being flown to different cities to perform as part of like a national competition, and it also showed me people who were exploring more vulnerable matters in their work and showing me the strength in it.
Mm.
And eventually, me um, incorporating it into my hip hop. Although I was very reluctant for a while, and when I did do it, which was a little bit before personal journals came out, I was still kind of testing the waters. I was still
Sure.
doing a lot of like silly battle rap stuff and just fun stuff. But that wasn't my lane. Like I don't feel like
Yeah.
that was everyone was doing that. So it was like, what am I going to contribute that's new to this scene that's given me so much, that's inspired me, and I think doing the vulnerable stuff, what people eventually called emo rap, helped out. I did skip a few years there, but because it's a very long, dragged out
Sure.
process. Me exploring myself as an artist and still getting comfortable with people in rap thinking maybe I'm gay because I'm talking about, you know, cutting myself or something.
Yeah, man.
And me like,
Well,
oh no, gay's the worst thing in rap. Like it was a mentality I had to shed because I was raised on it. I was raised on
yeah.
that.
And I mean, I was too, and I'm gonna be honest, man. Like, I'm guilty, and I want to thank you, by the way, too. It was I think earlier this month I'd posted an Immortal Technique quote, and not trash talking anything here. I just I've been a fan. I interviewed him many years ago, and he's a great lyricist, and I appreciate his intelligence, but um, I kind of would churn my eye when he would drop like derogatory terms towards gay people, and just like I've done with Ghostface Killer and other hip hop artists, and I would write it off in my head like it's just the equivalent of them using like the N word or something. It's not an insult, and I knew I was bullshitting myself. I can't speak for them, but either way, it's degrading. And if you're using that term as an insult, like that's not cool. So, I made that post, and you brought up a good point about something he'd been quoted as saying, and I did look online and did some research. And so it's not just about him, it's the genre in general. And you're right, like in rap, that's like the worst. Like,
it was the accepted mentality, and it was like a launch pad that people were safe with. We're like, all right, if I want to talk shit about a certain type of person,
right.
what are the safe ones? Okay, gay people, women.
Right.
Yeah,
So
we're gonna fucking talk shit about both these things, and white people probably, which is kind of understandable, but
yeah,
it was. I brought it up because it annoys me. I still haven't seen. I guess he's like apologized for that, and he's grown. Maybe
Sure.
he has. I don't know. I just remember there's we've done shows together, and we've never really clicked.
Yeah.
In fact, I knew him in the battle days too. So in the New York, when I was living in New York, we'd cross paths there. We never battled each other, but I knew like the crew he was running with. They were very like the angry cats.
Yeah.
They're I get it. Anger is important, and it fuels a lot of his music, and yes, he's incredibly smart, but I think that's why I get stuck on the homophobic remarks that he makes, because man, you're so smart, you want revolution, but whatever revolution you bring about, if it includes hatred of a certain group of people and you're going to be homophobic, it's the worst. Like I can't get behind it. And no one, like, people need to be kind of called out for it. I'm no saint. I've said stuff in my music that I like. Now I'm 43 years old. I look back on stuff I said when I was 19 or 23. I'm like, oh,
I hear you.
like I just said something I knew would be acceptable during the time, and like I'm like kind of, I think it's lazy, so I had to like atone for some of that. But we're growing as a culture. We're growing, not hip hop culture. I mean, we're growing, I think, as a society, and not even slowly. I think there's been some great progress made over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
That what was once acceptable no longer is. So when I catch glimpses of people who casually say faggot, insult, and it just, I think it just makes me cringe, and I just hope it doesn't spread where people are like, oh yeah, faggots are bad,
No, like I said, I'm grateful for that, man, because back in the 90s, I had a couple of gay friends in that small town, and like I would get in fights sticking up for them, like, and this is when it wasn't cool to stick up for gay people, and so I've been passionate about that as far back as I can remember. And so again, I didn't want to make it about Immortal Technique, but I think that was a good segue into one, of course, I want to talk to you and hear what your thoughts are about what's going on in the world right now. I know you just kind of talked a little bit about it, but also it's two different questions. We can approach it either way, but seeing this shift, with the incredible Black Lives Matter protests and a lot of inspiring things happening, there's a jaded part of me, like the old teenage Chris, like, we've seen stuff like this before. Is it real? Is it going to just fade away? I hope not. I'm trying to be optimistic. So that was one part of it. And the other part is in relation specifically to hip hop, knowing that like the scapegoats are things like homosexuals and women, like misogyny, sexism. Do you think, or have you seen, I don't know, are people shifting, or do you think there is the potential for a shift of what's happening now? So I know two different things there, but
yeah, there is a shift. There is going to be change. It's wild how much change has happened thanks to the protests and even the riots.
Yeah,
we're no more slow rolling, motherfucker. You need to change now. That's kind of the message that's out there. And you do see change. You do see certain laws taking effect, and people. It's weird. Like you have to make an officer's name go viral in order for them to face any penalties. And I think people are recognizing that. Like, why does it have to be that? Why do we have to march and then finally someone faces justice for for what they've done, and finally someone admits that police brutality is an issue. And I guess you're right. I also feel like this is just going to go away eventually, and then it's going to happen again in 40 years.
Yeah.
Probably sooner, considering how quickly time moves these days.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
But it does go in cycles, and people will become complacent. I think people will be given just enough to calm them down. Then the dust will settle. There'll be quote unquote normalcy that they'll be comfortable within. They'll have their PlayStations that keep them occupied until enough injustice happens again where people just get up in arms, and it'll be another youth movement. People who are too young right now to truly understand what's happening, and then they're going to see it later, in their life, and then identify with, oh, this shit's still going on. It's like, now it's my turn to. So when does it end? I don't know. If enough of us this is a question Immortal Technique could answer. This is his wheelhouse,
Sure.
This is not my wheelhouse. I understand anger. I understand why people are doing what they're doing. I don't know how to change it. I don't have great faith overall in humanity. I see how easily they're tricked. I see how complacency is actually a comfortable thing to just lay back into and be like, do I really want to fight every day for the rest of my life? Can I chill for a second, a couple of years?
Yeah, right. Man.
And the powers that be understand that is our nature. That is a human thing where I feel like they just have it figured out. They know, they're like, the riots are happening again. Okay, now we got to just change this, and this, but then we can reel it back after a year.
Right.
Facial recognition technology. Yeah. Amazon's not going to sell it to the police for another year. They're going to hold off for a year. Then what after a year? And then we're into this dystopian future bullshit where, thankfully we can wear masks.
We can. Like, you're talking about complacency. I live in West Hartford, and it's like, everyone was on lockdown and this and that, and all of a sudden, like, I'm driving, like, down the road in major areas of, like, this small city, and I'm not seeing masks. Like, people got bored of it, and we're watching numbers rise, and it's like, man, I'm rocking that mask. Like, I don't want to be responsible, like, I'm doing everything I can, and it's just like, the entitlement of some people, and I don't want to sound crotchety, but really, like, you just put a mask on, it's not about you, it's about other people, but no, people are so self-absorbed.
I don't get it. It drives me insane. They just been inconvenienced too much for too long.
Yeah. Oh man, the protests about the ice cream and the golf, like, that was killing me. And anyways, I digress. So I did want to ask you about writing. First of all, anyone that knows your music, you're an amazing lyricist. You have such a gift for what you do with that. And I know recently you had done, and I made a note of it. It was with the Heavy Hitters Festival. It was like a one-off presentation you did. But I did see you noted that you might be doing more of that online, maybe not. Touring right now is not happening for anyone. So do you mind telling me a little bit about that event and just writing in general, like whether it is specifically towards hip-hop or, your passion for that?
Yeah, well, I've been going, even before the pandemic, I've been going through major life transitions, and I understood that touring was not going to be as much a part of my life as I had experienced for the past 20 years or more than 20 years.
Sure.
So I was like, and I see people doing live streaming. I don't want to do a live stream show. I don't want to live off of live stream shows, and I don't know if you even can. You have to be creative with it. You have to work within the medium. So I'm trying to figure out the medium and not just like say, hey guys, I'm going to do a half hour of raps, tune in at 8 and send donations, if you like. There is a way to freak this medium, and I did dip my toes into the live stream waters a couple days ago I did like a writer's workshop. Which was my first time doing something of this sort, and it was very raw, but it gave me a much greater idea of how I can do things moving forward if we're to continue that path. And I don't mind doing it. I don't particularly love explaining my process. And I don't love telling people, oh, it would be better if you did it this way. Because when it comes to art and creativity, honestly, the true answer is if you like it, who the fuck cares? But be honest with yourself. Do you really want to be the one who likes it? Or are you trying to impress your ex-girlfriend? Are you trying to get noticed? Are you trying to go viral? Like, so when people are honest about, or do you want to win a poetry slam? Because I can teach you those tricks. There's a lot of trickery in all types of writing. Writing and art is manipulative. There's so many ways you can work that magic for your purposes, but know what your purposes are and stop fooling yourself. And so and as scattered as I sound right now, I feel like it was 2 hours of me being scattered during the workshop, but I did drop a lot of gems, and I hope the people who needed to hear it got it. And I also don't like writing as a tool. Writing can be used for change. Writing can be a tool to do bad things. So who am I really teaching out there? Who am I giving the keys to? Oh, the things that I eventually learned through the process and through repetition and through hard work. And I finally found like certain things that work for my purposes. I'm reluctant to give those away.
Yeah.
Unless I can trust the intent of the person who's trying to learn it.
For sure.
So and I'm going to move forward in a cautious way.
I dig that. I really appreciate that, and thanks for sharing what you did. I know you're also exploring the possibility of a podcast, and so you're venturing into. I mean, if there's one gift, I think, and gift probably is not the apropos word here, but something this pandemic has given people the opportunity to do. Not that everyone's taking advantage, is all those things that have been kind of brewing in our minds. Maybe it's been a year, many years. Like, if only I had the time to do this or that, or maybe it's not even that. It's just people are so bored. Like, it took the pandemic for me at 42 to learn how to finally like set up my guitars, like how to intonate them. And like, I mean, I've been playing since I was a teenager. But I'll bring them in and have someone else do it. It took the pandemic for me. I was like, all right, I have no excuse.
I don't know if you can see this, but
there you go. Yeah.
This is my studio room, and I still haven't put up my soundproofing.
Yeah.
I haven't set up. Here's
sweet.
my sound card. There's I don't know. There's a lot of like equipment just hanging around me, waiting for me to plug it into the proper holes. And then I was like, you know what? I'll just do a podcast. So everyone's got a podcast, but what I like about the podcast is because people they want me to live stream. They're like, oh, man, you should just live stream it. I feel more comfortable in a podcast format where I can do it at my own pace. I can edit it if I want, and I know a lot of the great podcasts just go unedited, but I have an idea of what I want to get into, and I also want to work on speaking. I'm not much of a talker, so just getting the words out of my mouth and being comfortable with that. I think the podcast you'll see a progress. Hopefully, if I get better at it, you'll see a progress in how I'm able to communicate, just with words streaming out of my mouth and me getting to a point without totally falling off course. And that's something I want to do. And I feel like it has potential, but it's hard. It's called hard lurk.
Hard lurk. Well, for whatever.
I'm going to hard lurk on everybody.
Whatever this is worth to you. I know you said a couple of times like you're working on your speaking skills. What I've learned, because I do the public speaking thing, never set out to do it. It just fell in my lap. Same with being a writer. What I've noticed in our conversation, man, is like you just have a natural persona about you. And what I've learned from my experience is that's just as important, if not more, than the words. Like, I mean, of course, we're writers, so the words are what matter to us. But for people, they want to feel that like sense of sincerity and humility, and that shines through with you. You're very personable. So there's me being emo with you. Okay.
Fingers crossed, man.
Yeah, man. No, I think you've got it. I'm excited to check it when you get it going. So Of course, got to ask you about Strange Famous Records. Something I wanted to ask you because I mean, that's something that's been going on since what was it, '96 or something you started?
Yeah, we post dated.
Post.
It wasn't really didn't really start in '96. '96 is when I put out my first demo. But
Okay.
when I did everything myself, and I didn't have a record label name. I was just putting out demos. And then by the time '99 came around, I did have the Strange Famous Records label name that I
Right.
would just put on the tapes. So
What I want to ask. Okay. It's gonna. Well, first of all, I go anywhere with it, and I want to know what's new. But one thing I am curious about, if you want to fit this into whatever you're going to say, is there's been so many great indie labels, that have come, stayed a little while, and then gone. Whether it's hip hop genre, punk, hardcore, and here's Strange Famous, like you're thriving, you're still killing it, like, and it's been a long time. So I would love to hear, like, what do you attribute that to? And please share anything else you'd like to about the
yeah,
label.
well, I think Strange Famous. I wouldn't say thriving. We're hanging on.
Well, okay, fair enough.
Every
Yeah,
I feel like every indie label that you'd speak to right now,
yeah, it's
they'd
true.
say the same thing.
Yeah,
We're lucky to have an infrastructure. We're lucky to have a built-in audience. We're lucky to have proven ourselves over the years where we have return customers. We don't have to
yeah,
continually earn new listeners. That I'm so proud of that. It's one of the
yeah,
things I'm most proud of in my music career. I love being able to work with artists, help them get their material out to our audience. Hope beyond hope that we can expand that audience with each new release. And it's very rare. The market is so saturated. It's so easy to put out music these days. It's so difficult to get recognition outside of your very small bubble.
right.
What media is really going to pick up on you. I can't, even from my last 2 or 3 major releases, studio releases,
Yeah,
press didn't give a fuck. They weren't even trying to cover it. And that was with Epitaph behind it,
yeah,
for a couple of them. Even Epitaph is like, listen, we can't get anything. It's like no one's biting. It's like if you're not brand new, they don't really care. And unless you're on TMZ or whatever, they don't
right.
cover it. So whatever with that. But within the indie world, in underground hip hop, we knew our audience, and we continually, we stay afloat. I would love to keep it afloat, and I'm probably going to put more attention into the label than I do my music at a certain point,
Yeah,
and get more artists involved. We are working with tons of artists right now, and it's because we're not going to be printing tons of physical media. We will always have our hands in physical media, but digital, if we can just get digital albums out to the people and get more artists working with each other, and I don't know, I think that there's value in that. Of course, we come from an era where if it wasn't on, if you couldn't hold it, it wasn't actually real.
right. Yeah. So
Getting-
weird. I know.
it's fucked up. Anyways,
It is.
like I don't like the way everything turned, but it is what it is. This is where we live, so we're
Yeah.
gonna do that. We will continue to do that, and but starting off, it was thankfully because of physical product. It was the tapes, it was the CDs, it was people being able to buy them. They were downloading, but they still were in the groove of buying something they love
Right.
and wanting to own it. That's not where people are at anymore. But unless we figure out, you got to figure out tricks like, oh, that new T-shirt, oh, that's limited, I need that. It's like
Yeah,
you got to be a marketing genius all of a sudden. You can't just make good fucking music.
You killed me with that. I saw like recently you'd put that new shirt up, the Strange Famous with the Bridges We Burn, and I was like, oh yeah, note to self, order it. I go to order it this morning, sold out. I'm like, motherfucker, see,
Yeah,
good marketing, success,
right.
good job, sir.
Love to hear that.
So yeah, good on you. So yeah, so let me ask you this, man. So kind of like bringing everything together, and there's still a couple other questions I have for you, but to bring all of this together, 8 years old, rhyming, doing your battles. Strange Famous, Epitaph, which I wish we had more time because I want to ask you about that, but there's a few other things I think will be more pressing for this. Here you are, and this is your life now. Hip hop and Strange Famous, as far as like work wise and whatnot. Did you? I mean, I appreciate you're saying like I had this window of opportunity and I had to strike, and you went after it. But
Yeah.
did you ever think like that you were going to be able to do it, like make it?
I was reluctant for a while because first went to Dean College for 2 years. It's a 2-year college.
Yeah.
I graduated and then I moved to New York because I didn't want to get a job yet. I wanted to still see what was out there for me if I could get discovered.
Sure.
Or like still on that shit. I was still trying to like get discovered. And I was like, I got to go to New York to get discovered. That's just how it's done. So I go out there and like look for ciphers and rap. And I did. I made a lot of good connections out there, but I couldn't. I eventually ran home with my tail between my legs because I couldn't really afford New York City.
Yeah.
And then I went back to college. I was like, all right, I guess I got to get a real degree now. And I studied journalism. And I was always rapping. Nothing. I was like rap. Hip hop was mostly what I spent my time on. In fact, the reason I went to URI, University of Rhode Island, is because of the radio station. They had a hip hop show from 3 to 6 every weekday. So that brought me there because I was like, I'm going to get on that radio show, but you have to be a student. So that's what I did. I went there. I studied journalism because journalism was easy enough to fake my way through. It's not going to take up too much of my mental capacity. I can actually just breeze by if you can write some sentences and whatever. I cheated my way through that whole course.
Right.
Wanted a rap, so I went to the radio station and I just promoted myself, self-promoted. I started making connections, started like just freestyling on everybody's shows. Then I'm winning the battles, and then the internet's big, and then like and Napster's there, and everyone's able to like say, hey, who's this Sage Francis dude? Like, let me see. Oh, they have my music in Sweden now. Oh, okay, people know who I am all over the world. I can travel. So once I realized all the seeds that I had planted, not all of them blossoms,
Right.
but to plant as many seeds as I did and wait for some type of critical mass where it was like, now I can chill and say, no, I'm not gonna get a job. This is gonna be my job. It was when I started getting shows in various cities, not just in the country, but around the world, and they were paying me enough for me to pay rent. And then once I realized I had enough shows lined up that I'd have rent paid for several months, I quit my job at Ben & Jerry's. I was like, as much as I like ice cream and scooping it and, giving it to kids, like free samples of shit, I was like, I'm out of here, peace. And, I grinded it out. There was none, especially because of the internet. Now I could talk to anybody. So I'm like, I never got to speak to the artists I liked. I never got to have interactions, with my favorite artists. I was like, I'm going to give that. Anyone who likes my music, who wants to reach out, let's talk. Like, yeah. I'm always going to be available to you. And I created a forum, a message board that it was the Nonprofits Forum at first, and then it became Strange Famous Forum. Yeah. Stuff like little things like that really, really, really helped out. It really helped everything grow. It helped a community build. And I just went real hard. I mean, people will always ask, what's the trick? Can you give me some advice? Like, give up your idea of having fun. Give up your idea of going to parties. There was no parties. There was no after parties. There was grinding it out, making sure everything was on point, making sure your business was in order, making sure you were honest and yourself, because that's the only way longevity works.
Yeah.
You can't keep a lie going for too long. Yeah. So if you're speaking in someone else's voice, you're going to run out. Your well will run dry.
Yeah.
Keeping all this in mind as I was going and learning as much as I could as I went, and ruining every relationship in the process, because again, like, social life was nil. And now all of a sudden my whole life flipped upside down because I got married. Helping raise 2 kids. We have a son expected in October. Touring is out of the question. So everything my life was for over 20 years is gone. Totally different. And I'm still not having parties, but I have to take myself away from my work quite frequently to take care of domestic duties and even label stuff,
Sure.
work that isn't music related. Because most of what I do has never really been actually recording songs or writing songs. It's all the extracurricular stuff that you have to dedicate yourself to. And the reason why you have to take on all those tasks is because sure you can get a manager, sure you can get a driver, sure you can, but then you have to pay them all.
Yeah.
If you can multitask, if you can wear several hats and it's not going to affect you negatively, and I'm not saying it didn't affect me negatively, but at least it helped pay for my house.
Yeah.
At least I was able to get certain things situated that I needed situated in my life, pay off my student loans, help bury a relative, like all these things that pop up in life as you grow older. The expenses never go away, man. It's like, holy shit, I'm lucky that I was never a spender. I hoarded my money because I was like, I know I'm not going to be able to live off this forever. And
Sure.
it's the money I'm making. Let's put it away and save it, because there's going to be a dark day, many days that this is going to come in handy. And I don't want to stress out for the rest of my life. So, yeah.
So relatable, man. Like one of the greatest gifts I think punk and hardcore gave me was the installation of like the DIY ethics, because just like you, I'm no Sage Francis, but like, I have 3 books with Simon and Schuster. That's what I do for a living. This podcast I do because I love doing it, but I'm an author, a public speaker. I don't have an assistant. I don't have a manager. I'm only like 6 years into this, but I work 7 days a week, and I have to be very mindful because I am not married or have kids, but I'm engaged, and I don't, I see that it pulls me away, and I have to be very conscious to like pull myself out. And it's tough when you're doing everything yourself. So I know people see like you've got records out and you've got shirts, and it's like, oh man, that must be the life. And I'm not saying it's not. I'm sure it's wonderful, but people often don't understand the amount of work that really goes into that. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I don't think you would either, but
yeah, and part of the work is knowing who to let into your fold.
Right.
Because I get tons of assistance from this guy Storm Davis, who's been running Strange Famous since 2008, 2009. Yeah. Without him, the label's gone. Like I have to acknowledge like who really can hold it together without me micromanaging everything. Because I did that to him at first. I'm like, I need to know everything you're doing at all times. And then eventually I'm like, all right, you do this better than I can. Thank you. You are worth, you are worth more than I can pay you.
Yeah.
So like there are people, thankfully we are able to exist as a label because not only people like him, but volunteers, talented fans who are like, hey, want to do a video? Like, yeah, I want to do a video. They're so fucking expensive though. Like, hey, man. I can do this, and like, fuck yeah. And then we make it work out. We get designers, like people are like, man, I'd love to design a cover for you. Like, really? Thank you, because sometimes those cost $3,000.
Hell yeah, man.
So
I do know.
Big shouts to all the people who've helped us, and you didn't get paid enough, and we try to make it up for you in other ways. And people who just love our stuff so much that they contribute because they want part of something that they believe in. That's been instrumental.
Yeah, man. I resonate. It means so much, that you get to share their work too. It's something they love you, and you're a fan of their work, and it's wonderful. So I know we've only got a few minutes left. There's a shitload of stuff I wanted to talk to you about, but 2 things I would love to end this with, and I'm going to put them together. You take them as you want, because part of it is going to go in the mental health direction, because I'm passionate about that. I work with a lot of younger people, and I know you've talked about experiences with your sister and whatnot going on, but also I want to share a post and go into, you're married now, and that's amazing. And like you said, you're raising 2 girls and you have a son on the way. Like, that's so rad. And this post you'd shared, I hope you don't mind me reading. I mean, it's on Facebook, but I was really touched by this when it was earlier. I think it was earlier this month. Let me see here. You had wrote, it was June 9th. You wrote, on this day 10 years ago, we released the video for Best of Times. That was back when I was still wondering if I'd live long enough to see marriage or have kids. I don't think I'll live long enough to see my kids have kids, but hey, it's not the end of the world. It's been a hell of a trip, folks. I mean, that's incredible, because I've gone through mental health, and I don't know actually the extent to which, I know you've talked about things, but I don't know a lot about your personal life, and I'm not asking you to share anything you're not comfortable, but I've gone through it. We've all gone through it in some regards, some heavier than others. So I ask this question more for like the teens I work with. I mean, I think anyone can benefit hearing from any experience or anything. So if there's anything in that regard, like your journey, like, and here you are, like in a place you didn't think, at one point in your life you'd make it to. I didn't think I'd live to see 40, like I've died. Like I've been on a hospital bed intubated because I couldn't breathe. I didn't think I'd be here. Thank God I am. That's why I'm so passionate about giving back and doing things. So if you have any words about that, and then I'll pick it up and we'll go into the father marriage thing, because I really want to ask you about that too. I can't help it, those lovely fingernails you have.
Yeah. I've been peeling them off, but they still linger. Well, part of the song I was referencing is called "The Best of Times."
Yeah.
And in that song, I really do. I guess I tell my life story, and it's kind of cryptic, but enough where I tell my personal truths, but in a way where a lot of other people can relate. Like, hey, I know what that was like,
right.
And stuff I always hold on to. It's stuff that was always in me, and for some reason, that instrumental, the music, what is his name? Oh, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. He did the soundtrack for Amelie.
Oh. And I know who you're talking about too. You keep talking. I'm going to look it up while you're speaking, because I've got to give respect where it's due, credit.
So I had one night to write a song. I received that music on the last night I was recording my album, and I stayed up listening to that music, and it just brought all those images from my life. I was like, what I'm going to write about? Obviously, I have to write about something that means something to me, something that I've been holding on to. And it was an inventory that I went through. And all these things I never would have put in rap songs or even poems up to that point. And like, it just flowed out. I was like, man, I was in love with a girl in 4th grade. Isn't that weird? I was like, and I never talked to her. I was in love with her right until 8th grade. And then I realized, oh, that wasn't love. I had a real weird, sick crush, and I internalized it, and it came out in other ways. And I was like, and then this happened in my life. But man, when that went wrong, I thought maybe I would kill myself, because I thought that's all that mattered in life. And like coming to these realizations in each stage of your life, you're like, man, everything you thought was so big, everything you thought was so important, if you just give yourself the time to power through, make it to the next stage so you can look back, at least give yourself that chance. Give yourself a chance to look back on it. Say, hey, that shit was not as big as I thought it was. And, that those lessons that when people don't get to learn those lessons, that hits so hard, man. It makes me so sad when someone just decides to leave and you're like, man, that could have been worked out. I know it. Maybe you didn't have yourself in the right group of people. Maybe you didn't have a support system and you didn't believe you were worth a support system. But, for all that I've seen and all that I've gone through and all that I've lived and all I've been told and everything I know and think, and like, you got to give yourself a chance. That's it. Don't give up on yourself.
Yeah, man. I really dig that. I respect that. And thank you. Like, when I share that with the teens, I feel kind of corny, because I picture teenage Chris like listening to someone say that, and it's like, fuck that noise. But no, really, that's I'm grateful to hear you say that. I'm grateful that I'm here to recognize that as such a deep, real truth. Like, I just lost a friend to suicide this month, and it's definitely not the first, and sadly probably won't be the last. And like you said, it could have worked out if you just held on, but I wasn't in this individual's shoes, and I just, hopefully they're at peace.
That's the other thing. You never know. Some people, because mental health is your reality. It's your reality. You can't understand what's outside of your reality. But if you can give yourself that glimpse, that little glimmer of maybe, maybe it can be different. Some can't. I kind of understand it. That's why it hurts so much, because you're like, you're wrong. That's so frustrating. It's like, you're fucking wrong. Something can happen. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I sound like an asshole. But the reason I said, I don't think I'm going to live to see my kids have kids, is because this is my first son that's coming, right? Yeah. And I'm at the age, my my father was when he died.
Oh,
And I don't really know any men in my family who've lived much longer than this. My grandfather he lived to be the oldest. He lived to be 63.
okay.
And, it's just those kind of things I think about. Like, my window, I'm not going to pretend I'm living forever. Like, let me accept
Yeah.
my reality. Like, I hope not. Like, I need to push on for these kids and my wife. I love, my family. I love them all to death. I just, people are like, oh, don't worry about it. You're going to see your kids get married. No, like, well, I probably won't.
Well,
I'm sorry. Oh, that's another reason I want to do my podcast. I was like, maybe I'm not. I want to be able to speak and say things plainly. I don't want to speak in trickery. I don't want to have like little labyrinth lyrics that
right.
a 10-year-old or a 20-year-old son of mine has to like sit down with a fucking calculator and bang out an equation. Like, I would like to speak in a manner he can speak, like, listen to and make sense of, and tell my story and help like learn other people's stories. That is a weird motivation for me as well.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. So, I mean, to bring this to a close, let's if you're cool, that just I gotta say, first of all, congratulations. You're married. It's amazing. I
Thank
am
you. She's so
lucky.
high, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say for listeners, like, it was crazy to me. You're married to a friend of mine. Like, we're not super close, but we love hip hop and we're running circles. And I'll never forget, man, when I saw her. I just saw it on Facebook, the picture, and I had to like, wait, that's Sage Francis. And it was like, I text her, I'm like, am I crazy? You both like are wonderful people. I couldn't be happier. What two great people. So how is like marriage and now you're, like you said, you're raising these kids and you're embracing it. Obviously, I love that you have your fingernails.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast, you can't see we've got some hot pink and green going on. How is that? What's your experience been like? How's that? Has it changed? I mean, no, it's changed you. Like, how has it changed you? And
It's changed me a lot. My
Yeah.
whole thing is flipped. It's exhausting. It's I'm still trying to make sense of it because, again, I lived alone for so long.
Yeah.
I was raised an only child. Like, now I'm suddenly living with 3 females. It's the energy is different. I don't speak often. I'm not a talker, and I don't even get to really have adult conversations with my wife because the 4-year-old is a chatterbox and you can't get a word in edgewise. But it's like little things like that. I love that. I'm cool with that, and I'm always looking for teachable moments, and I will step out of the way sometimes when I feel like I need to step out of the way, but I'm always trying to help out however I can. My domestic duties have increased 1 billion.
Sure.
So like, I don't mind taking myself away from my music in order to take care of the house, get my house in order, and make sure we have a safe, stable, happy environment for the people I love. But that is a lot of work. It demands a lot of me and my time and my energy. And I'm burned out. I'm not so like, hey, what do you think about this going on in the world and that? I'm like, I don't even really know what's going on. Like, I have no idea. Of course, I don't listen to the new rap because I don't have time to listen to new music. When I have time to listen to music, I'm usually working on music or with our artists at Strange Famous. Yeah. So I have to admit that I'm totally out of the loop. It's not the existence that I've known for a very long time. So I'm adjusting. I've had to shift. There's a lot in my head that I need to shift where my priorities are and where to focus my attention and my energy. How do I make it work though? That's how the world is so different all of a sudden. Not just my personal life, but pandemic hits and this and that is just like, whoa, okay. I'll take it one fire at a time. That's how I'm dealing with it. That's how my wife and I, ever since we met, it's been one fire at a time. There's a lot. Like, I will not get into most of what we've had to deal with, but
for sure,
it's a lot. It's a lot, fucking lot. And I never would have done it for anybody else until I met her.
I couldn't be happier, man. Like I said, so happy for both of you. Please give her my regards. I'll hit her up soon. It's been too long. But thank you, man. Like you said, I know you're super busy. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to have this conversation. And thanks for your raw authenticity, man. I didn't expect anything less, but I really appreciate you chatting it up with me not being much of a talker, like you said. You did great, man. I had a really lovely time.
Thank you, man.
So, Sage, thank you very much. And again, for anyone listening, watching, strangefamousrecords.com. If you are not familiar with Sage's work, and even if you aren't a typical hip-hop fan, please check it out. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. It's art is what I would call it, and I mean that totally sincerely. So, Sage, thank you not only for your time, but for everything you've brought into this world. You've gifted a lot of people with some really cool shit. So, thanks, man.
Yeah.